and let's bring in the man who may have something to do with those games, Arlington Martin and Denton Ryan, and then Longview and Temple. We're joined by the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer on the phone line. Now we're joined by Craig Way. Do I have that right? Do you have something to do with both those games?
Well, let's say I'll punch the time clock on the day there right when I walk in here in the Jerry World. You know, when you walk in and you go past the really nice ornate bar and all that stuff, there's a time clock on the wall, and you punch that time clock when you go in to call a game right before you walk into the network TV booth. So yeah, I'll plan to do that before being in the booth to call both those games.
You're a busy man that weekend because Texas has a game that week, right? Scheduled. They're on the docket for Saturday.
Saturday afternoon in Lubbock. So as soon as the second game, the Longview Temple nightcap is over, spotter Andy Way and I hop into the car and we'll drive the 320 miles out there. The overnight drive at South Plains, grab a few hours sleep when we get to the hotel, and then off to Jones AT&T Stadium. We'll go from AT&T Stadium in Arlington to Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock for Texas and Texas Tech that afternoon. It'll be a full meal deal on the weekend.
Yeah, you will not get cheated. I will say that. No. You will get your fill of football. Speaking of your fill of football, week 3 of the Texas high school football season is now in the books. And I think we're still kind of in the early going. In fact, I believe that the number is only 65% of the eligible teams, 4A and below, in the UIL have played 3 games. 35% have played 2 or fewer. But I guess my question for you is there a team right now that you would say at 3-0 or 2-1 or 2-0, however you want to categorize it, some sort of team that's off to a start that has really caught your eye and you're saying, okay, maybe this isn't just a flash in the pan. Maybe this is a team I need to take a closer look at heading forward.
How about Pickles alma mater? How about Wano?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, at least they merit a second look. And then let me go down. Well, obviously you brought up Westbrook a couple of times. I think they're certainly worthy of it. Maybe Lacey is another one that kind of comes to mind that's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. That's off to a good start. I mean, those are some I would say that probably pop off the page to me and go, okay, all right, I'll give you another one, Salado.
Yeah,
that's not coming off the win over Stephenville. There's another one that comes to mind. Just as you mentioned, just off of the top of the head thoughts of some teams that come to mind, and you'd say, hey, take a closer look at these guys.
Well, and to your point, and something I know we talked about a little bit on Scoreboard on Friday night is we started talking about a topic or a situation that we're going to have to deal with all year, which is we're going to be talking about teams that have, in some cases, played radically different schedules, not just as far as quality of opponent, but also literal number of opponent. I think a perfect example is down the road at some point, West Orange Stark's going to walk into a game that's played 4 more games than them or 3 more games than them. And so I guess from your perspective, do you view that like, are we still waiting on more data to figure out exactly what kind of impact literal number of games played is going to have as far as assessing any sort of matchup going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Tep. I mean, we kind of said we're kind of in that mode of a lot of folks are that kind of waiting for Godot moment on West Orange Stark. You know, are when and if, or are we going to get to see the Mustangs and then how good will they be, as good as we expected them to be going into the season before they couldn't start the season. I think that's something that, and to take it to a different level, and because I'm sure you probably noticed it as well, the word that's come down today that apparently at the collegiate level that the Big Ten Conference is preparing to announce a schedule tonight, and that they would start October 17th, and if they ran all the way straight through 9 weeks consecutive with no margin for error, and then played their conference championship on December the 19th, they could get 9 games in, and under that old antiquated NCAA rule, 6 games could determine a legitimate conference champion if you did it that way. So does that mean that if you had a a 6-1 Big Ten team? Do they belong in the college football playoff?
Right.
I mean, that's at a different level, but we're still talking about the same principle here about games to determine how good a team are. In the case of the UIL structure, we know you were just designating your district champion, and we've seen that at the lower classifications where you only have 4 schools in the district, and you're playing 3 district games to determine who reaches the playoffs. They still get to participate in the playoff bracket, but it doesn't answer the question of how serious a contender are they, how deep can they go, and only time, I think, will help answer that question.
We're visiting with Craig Way, the Texas High School Football Hall of Famer, as we always do here every Tuesday on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation at #TF Today. So now looking forward into week 4 of the season, one thing I am particularly interested in is you have a number of teams that have absolutely run the gauntlet as far as non-district games are concerned. I think we've got a matchup of 2 of them this week when you're talking about Argyle and Waco La Vega, 2 teams that have not taken any breaks this past over the non-district game, and this week certainly won't be one either. Another one kind of in a different way, I think, is a team like Shiner, where they are going and taking on East Bernard, and while, yes, some of the teams that they've played I don't think have necessarily been world beaters, all of them have been bigger than them. And so looking forward, like one thing I'm particularly interested in, I'm curious if you share the same thought, is there going to be a wear-down effect for these teams who have run through these absolutely brutal non-district schedules, even if they come through the other side unscathed from a health perspective? Is there going to be a wear-down effect as far as, man, we've gone through a slog, and now we've got to play games that, quote-unquote, actually count now that we get into district play?
Somewhere in that gray area sliding scale of sharpening your teeth, getting you better, making you tougher for that. There's that side of it, and then there's the wearing down effect. Somewhere in there lies the key. And I'll tell you this, as we've said, Don Hyde is not afraid to navigate the current there. He's willing to turn that surfboard into the pipe and see just if he can come out the other side of that thing. And that's why it's really going to be interesting to see how well they do. I mean, he already lost Errol Rawls, we know, but he's still gotten it hadn't dropped off of what he's gotten from Jordan Rogers and from the other guys in terms of their play. So the question is, what kind of an effect does it have on other schools? What kind of an effect does it have on a 2A program like Shiner? Does it make them tougher? Does it make them harder? Or do they get worn down? And it's a great question, Jeff. I think we will see the results of time. And, as long as there's not serious injuries, maybe there's a little bit of a wear-down factor. But, I mean, young, strong kids, and they're used to playing games every week. They're just not perhaps in the custom of playing the, top caliber opposition week in, week out, like we've seen those 2 programs, at least in the case of those. And like you said, it's not like Argyle has played chopped liver either. So that's why it's going to be a good test and a lot of fun to see what happens with La Vega and Argyle.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your other gig, calling games for the Texas Longhorns. We were talking last week about heading into their game against UTEP. They were big favorites. They looked like big favorites, and they acted like big favorites in a dominating victory over UTEP. I know it's the Miners, and they are a team that is certainly not in Texas's weight class at the moment. But were you surprised is the wrong word, but were you struck by Texas's performance? Particularly, I thought for a team, and every team kind of has this excuse to look a little bit dull in the opening. Ask Texas Tech, for example. Seems like Texas came out and looked awful sharp from the word go.
I was prepared to accept just about anything, only because of what you just described. The fact that there was no spring practice, that there was all of that, the separation and the shelter in place, no work, and all of that sort of stuff. And then you hear the stories about how the guys were trying to find how they could work out on their own. And Court Jaquist, the backup linebacker, going to Home Depot and buying buckets and filling them with cement so he could use it as a workout. By the way, it ended up paying off for him. He ended up starting the game on Saturday night. There, you know, a lot of – I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought they were ready to go, if nothing else, also because they went through the entire month of August and then the first couple of weeks of September without an active COVID case. So that can't be overstated. Here's a team that didn't lose kids to that. So you felt pretty good about that. Weren't sure how they would do health-wise, injury-wise. We mentioned waiting for Godot Mo. We're still waiting on Jordan Whittington now because he injured the knee, and so now he's got to have surgery, and he's out 3 to 4 weeks. Josh Thompson almost got his ear torn off, but he'll be ready to go for Texas Tech. Took some stitches and played really, really well at his position. So by and large, they got through the game health-wise okay. So in that respect, I know that Tom Herman and the staff were very, very pleased. But I'm here to tell you, Ted, I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought they would be okay because they were in good mental and physical shape, so to speak, going in. But until you get on the field, you don't know for sure. And now they breathe a little bit easier that they've got the first one under their belt and now get ready for what is always an interesting, if not sometimes perilous trip to Lubbock, even though that'll be next weekend since they have an open date on the schedule this week.
And I would be I must ask you about calling the game. You're a guy, we've talked about how you've called these games for a while now. You've got a little bit of you're in a bit of a rhythm as far as calling these games, but obviously everything about 2020 is different. Once you got in the booth, was it just calling a game like normal, or did you feel like were there things around the actual broadcast experience that had you a little off kilter?
Well, if you don't count this summer when I actually called a Madden campus football tournament, Big 12 championship game, if you don't count that I actually did there online, it was the first real play-by-play that I'd done in 6 months. So you'd like to think that you don't completely are covered in rust, but you may feel like you got to knock off some rust. But you're right, there were different elements. For example, there are all kinds of health protocols in place, included in the fact that we were down 2 people in our booth because our booth has a maximum of 4 allowed in it. So we didn't have our statistician with us, and also our producer was remote on the headset. So it worked out fine, but I also had this gigantic 3-ring binder with other the responsibilities, those sponsorship reads and things like that. So that was different. But other than that, and we had the big plexiglass divider between Roger Wallace and myself, kind of like what we're seeing on television as well, with some of the pro sports leagues. But when you get beyond that, then it's once the game kicks off, it's down to calling the game, and you kind of lose yourself in the game. You don't worry about it, and I'm grateful to be in the stadium and calling the game. I think some guys have done some marvelous work having to call the games remotely. Brad Sham had to do it the other night from AT&T Stadium, calling the Cowboys game as they played in Los Angeles. But I'm happy to have the opportunity to call the games in the stadium, and it did feel regular, Jeff, once we got it going at that point.
He's Craig Way. His other regular gig is going to be on Fox Sports Southwest, High School Scoreboard Live, coming at you 11 o'clock on Friday. And, of course, catch him on The Horn in Austin on Light the Tower with Jeff Howe. Craig, appreciate your time, my friend, and I will see you on Friday night.
Hey, try to keep Pickle from getting too, fired up and just losing sight of her completely before you get to Friday.
Yeah, I got to tell you, so for those who don't know, Pickle is going to the Llano-San Saba game on Friday night to cover it for Fox Sports Southwest. Big doings in Jacket Country. Craig, I have legit concerns about whether or not she can be objective.
Oh, come on.
She's the queen of Llano County, so you start from that baseline, and then you go from there. I mean, Cooper's Barbecue and every other business there in Llano is rolling out the red carpet for her on Friday, so they're going to be fired up. So we'll see. I think San Saba can hold its own, but we know what she means to Llano and what Llano means to her.
Oh, that was just terrible. No.
Craig, we'll see you Friday, buddy.
All right.
Bye, Craig.